Geopolitics and Empire is joined by author, researcher, publisher, and musician from Sweden, Jacob Nordangård. He's chairman of the Faros Foundation, runs the independent publishing house Faros Media Productions. He's been giving outstanding talks on the global elite and has written excellent books on the same subject, some of which are available or will be soon available in English. He's also band leader of the doom metal band Wardenclyffe. Welcome to Geopolitics and Empire, Jacob.
Thanks. Thanks a lot.
You're doing a lot of fascinating work, and maybe just I first came across your work thanks to your interview with Ivar Cummings recently, and your recent talk at an event in Europe just a few weeks ago that I watched online. When and how did you sort of start researching the elite?
Well, I think it's something that you have in you. I've always been a skeptical mind and always thought about the elites in some way and how they influence and manipulate politics. But when I really started to dig into it, it was during my university studies, and in the late 90s. And the first thing I did was to more or less, it was not the global elite at that time. I did a student thesis about city planning. And in that paper, it was about my hometown, Norrköping. And I was studying the power dynamics. Who is the ones who get to decide on how the city is planned and the architectural design and everything? And what I found out was that, okay, it's not the people. it's not those who live in these places. It's other. And it wasn't the city council. No, it was other people, influential people that had the money. And in Norrköping, we have this real estate magnate that is now one of the richest in Sweden. And that was the start of it, just to see that, okay, those who have power, it's not those you see in politics. It's people behind the politics. It's people that influence that way. So after this, I got into working in real estate and development of new houses and so on. And I saw another side of this with how this people can be very ruthless in, it's like the mafia in some way. And during that time, I got so fed up with that and how this business worked. So I started at the university again. And at that time, I became interested in energy and how more or less it was about oil and the business of oil and how the importance of oil for the economy and everything. And that got me into the more global level of these very rich, influential people. Because, energy is everything. So this took me into investigating what was behind the energy markets and how energy works. And I wrote a couple of student papers about this, and especially about how can we get the alternatives to work instead of oil or fossil fuels. And it was my conclusion that wasn't really possible. And at the same time, they were starting to, it was a lot of talking about the climate issue at that time. This was like in 2005, 6. And we had Al-Gore, coming out and talking about an inconvenient truth.
Yeah, Al Gore actually visited the campus where I taught here in Mexico. I think it was like 2012, 13, or 14. Of course, they had to pay him $200,000 to talk, and the questions had to be scripted, no off the cuff questions or remarks. But I just wanted to add what you said previously. I've seen the same thing you're talking about in Sweden. I've seen it in Croatia. We've got basically a mafia state, domestic and foreign oligarchy. You see it everywhere. And, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but even here where I live in Mexico, I found we're receiving Rockefeller Foundation financing to build out a smart city. It's in the official Mexican government papers. But before we get to that, let me just ask you, since you brought up energy and oil, I've had this burning question, and I don't know, I'm on the fence. I believe that oil is abiotic. I kind of question peak oil. What are your thoughts on whether they're lying to us or exaggerating how much oil or energy we have?
I mean, that was the thing for me, because when I started to investigate these things with oil and energy, I was very into the peak oil theory. Because I thought that explains things. I thought it explained why the United States wanted to make war in Iraq and Afghanistan and everything. So they wanted to control this because it was. I had read this Michael Rupert's book, Crossing the Rubicon, for example, and I know William Engdahl was into this peak oil theory at that time. So it kind of kicked my. I became very interested, so I just wanted to know what was behind it. So for a couple of years, I investigated everything about oil and peak oil, and after a while, I started to. I mean, at first it was very convincing with this peak oil theory, but after a while I started to study these other theories, and of course the abiotic theory, and it was an oil geologist called Kenny, I think, and Thomas Gold, and a couple of Ukrainian, Russian scientists that spoke about this. And also when I started to get critical about this was when Club of Rome stepped in, and all these, and I found out all about Club of Rome. I first believed these things because I was an environmentalist and I heard all these things. So the oil men were the bad guys. So so I knew about the mafia, but I didn't know how smart these people were. So when Club of Rome stepped in, I saw that they were into these conferences in the early 2000s, and also other people called Simmons wrote a book about Twilight in the Desert, and they had these doomsday scenarios about the oil of Saudi Arabia that will run out, and very quickly it would just take a couple of years. And I was scared at that time. I thought it was, oh shit, this gonna be, which will be bad, And but as time went by, these things, it didn't happen. None of these scenarios came true.
So would you say then it's basically, because they've used in the past, everything from international terrorism, which they themselves finance. They're just trying to scare us into submitting to their global domination schemes. Would you say that we have? Or I mean, I've had guests on, petroleum geologists, who say, we've still got hundreds and hundreds of years of coal and all sorts of other energy. Would you say that we have oil for well into the future?
Yeah, I think so. I really do now, because I mean it's almost like the climate issue, and how the theory about humans influence the climate and everything. And it's so hard there's no proof, and it's very hard to measure these things. How do you know how much oil there is? How do you know how much coal there is? It's very, very hard to have these calculations, and these people were so sure about themselves all the time. But there's no proof. There's no science behind it.
It's like trying to count the grains of sand on the planet, and there's a quote from the Bible about that. How it's impossible. So it's just like you say, how are they going to know how much oil or coal and such? I mean, they can make certain estimates. But you mentioned Club of Rome.
Yeah.
I didn't want to ask. Maybe we don't have to go into detail, because again, I'll include your links to your lectures where you go into more detail. And you were citing a lot of great books. I've had to pause your lectures and then take note of the books and get some of those books myself. But I sort of want to get your big picture view as to who some of these people are. You've mentioned many familiar names in your talks, like H.G. Wells, Huxley, Rockefeller, so forth. Over the weekend, I was hanging out with Dr. Rima Leibo, who was famous in that Jesse Ventura, Alex Jones episode from 2009, where she predicted basically the pandemic takeover. She contends that the Rockefellers are one of the principal movers and shakers. You've got your book called Rockefellers Controlling the Game. But just briefly, who would you say are more or less make up the core group of these globalists or one worldists?
Well, it's a billionaires club, that's for sure, and they have the foundations. And I mean, I started with this. I mean, when you have to follow this to the source, and we have certain key people that were involved in the beginning. The super rich in the early 20th century or the late 19th century were, of course, very influential in building up this. And we have a Carnegie Corporation, and of course the Rockefeller Foundation, and later the Ford Foundation, and then and they were kind of doing the big parts in the 20th century. I mean, Rockefellers with the health and also environment, and the Ford Foundation very, very influentially in setting up social agendas, and Carnegie as well. And then we have these new actors stepping in. I mean, and we had a lot of other people involved in the oil business that set up new foundations from the middle of the 20th century. And when we have the new generation was the tech billionaires. Bill Gates, of course, the most known, but we have, I mean, Scholar Foundation, and now we have Bezos, of course, and I mean, it's so many of these people that are part of a little tight club, I would say, and it's. One thing that I learned about writing this Rockefeller book, it was how they used this idea of a foundation. I mean, and that was the Carnegie Rockefeller methodology to influence policy and also don't have to pay the taxes, or more or less, I would say it's a way that you tell them you take money. It's your way to not that the government tells you what to do with your money, but you can be like the government, and instead of giving tax to them, you take this money and influence policy instead of this. It's and earning money on it, of course, because that's it's so many things that we achieve with this methodology.
But and speaking to what, that was my next question, what they want to achieve. By the way, I've got, I think up behind me, the Foundations, Their Power and Influence. That's a classic book talking about what you're saying. And of course, as you say, now it's pretty big. I mean, it's a small, big club. You've got also World Economic Forum and all that stuff. But
yeah, of course. I mean that's a hub for these people that has become very. In people's view, before they were more in the shadows, one can say. I mean, people know about these foundations, but I don't think they really knew what they were doing. Many thought that they give to charity, they build museums, they do these good things, but but now we have taken all their power and put it in a World Economic Forum for everyone to see.
And their mask is coming off. And I think, as they achieve global domination, they have to do it openly. And so that's where they're going now. And that was sort of my next question. I recently came across an actual clip of H.G. Wells from the Associated Press from a century ago, where he states, quote, "The collective affairs of mankind will be controlled by one single federal government, which will have continuously increasing powers. I believe it as surely as I believe spring will come again next year." End quote. I've had on the podcast a couple years back, I guess someone who's not quite on our side, but I like to talk to people. I sometimes if I can manage to talk to globalists, I do. And someone who's in the movement pushing for world federation and world government, and they really believe this stuff. They're trying to reform the UN or create like a UN parliamentary assembly. But basically, my focus in all of this has been their focus on global domination, ergo world government or global government. I find that to be like the number one thing that they're going for, and all these other activities are toward achieving that end. Would you agree? What would you say are some of their principal goals?
Yes, that's always been. I mean, it's just look to it. And H.G. Wells was he was early and spot on. He said it, and he was a science fiction writer, and he said it in his fiction work, but also in his more political books. And that was one thing that when I started to dig into this, I found it directly. I mean, it wasn't something that was hidden. It was very obvious that they thought this. And I remember writing a paper in the university about how the climate issue evolved. This was in 2009, and it was the first things that they said was we have to have a world government to manage this with the climate, because it's a problem that spans all over the globe. So, but the problem was even if they write this, they say this openly. If you state this, I mean, I put it in a paper with the quotes and everything. It's published in at the university. People tend to think that it must be a conspiracy theory, even though they state this openly. And it's the same now. I mean, if you, my last book is about United Nations, have a new agenda, our common agenda. A report that they put out into 2021, and I mean this is very obvious that they wanted to create, and they in the run up to this report, a lot of people that has been involved with creating the idea of creating a world parliament, and also want more executive powers for United Nations. They are involved in this. They are very, very involved in it, and they want to achieve something to 2024 when we'll have this big meeting in the United Nations. Summit of the future.
It's funny. You mentioned 2009. That was the same year I was doing my graduate studies in Switzerland. I came across the same issues. Some of the professors, folks at the university, were openly globalists. I mean, they were openly quoting to me H.G. Wells, and I had the same issue. Some of us, myself and classmates, were calling out the New World Order and world government, again, academically, factually. And they even had us sit down for a meeting, the university, and say, listen, you guys you're going off the reservation with this conspiracy talk. And then a minute later, they're like, there's no world government, there's no new world order. Then a minute later, the university folks are like, I mean, there's a world government, but it's good. It's good. So it's like, if you criticize it, it doesn't exist, you're bad, you're crazy. But if you're on board, then yeah, it's happening.
Fantastic.
It's awesome. It's crazy, these games they play. And let me ask you about the EU, because I've forever seen the EU as their, Dr. Roth in Germany talks about the Nazi roots of this Brussels EU project. Soviet dissidents call it the new European Soviet. For me, it's a totalitarian construct, the EU. But I also see it as the blueprint for a technocratic
government.
Yeah, world government, technocratic. And now we see here in North America, Mexican president is saying, he said last year, we want to copy the EU and integrate Canada, USA, and Mexico. In South America, former presidents are saying, we want to copy the EU and create a South American union. There's already African American Union. I've been saying this for 20 years because, just like you say, you read their papers. This is their plan. And further thoughts on the regional unions and the roles they play.
Well, one thing is that Jacques Delors, that was the head of the European Commission in the late 80s, and more or less the father of the European Union, he said that Europe is the laboratory for world government. And he said this in a speech at the Royal Institute of International Affairs in London, the Chatham House. And the speech is called The New World Order or something like that. So, these things has been talked about for a very, very long time, of course. I mean, this thing with North American Union and South American Union, and they had some. I've tried out some things in South America, but this is a part of the big structure. I mean, that's how they will run things, and that's another part of our common agenda. That Guterres, the Secretary General, he wants to give more. These regional organizations will have a bigger part in the United Nations. So it's more like they don't really like all these member states. So it's better to have these big structures. It's easier to govern that way. So they will have be more involved in the work of the United Nations, and that's one thing about I have seen with European Union from the beginning. They were very tightly connected to the United Nations and what the United Nations were doing, their programs, especially environment and so on, always on board. And also, I mean, and one thing, I remember when Sweden wasn't a part of the European Union until 1995, so it was a big public discussion, and we have a referendum and everything. But at that time, the politicians that wanted us to join, I mean, they didn't speak about this federal ideas. It was, I mean, it's a good thing for you. You can go to Germany and you can bring more beer and booze. and that's how they convinced people about it, and never telling people what it was really about. And I mean, that's we have seen that now, and how much our policy is decided in Brussels. I mean, it just goes to our government, and they put a stamp on it. Okay, approved decision in our parliament, and okay. So yeah, then I mean, I've studied European Union as well. I did my doctoral thesis about European Union biofuel policy, and I saw how rotten it was, and how it was just a playhouse for these big lobby organizations that run things behind the scenes, and these politicians that we vote in, they don't have much to say about it. They more or less have to go along.
They just enjoy the ride.
Agenda.
Yeah, for 6 months in 2009 in Switzerland, I was a staff assistant at the EU and UN. Yeah. And all of these functionaries, you know, I was with the Czech Republic's mission to the UN, and they were chairing the EU for those 6 months. And all those functionaries, you know, folks from Czech Republic, and they get great jobs, great benefits, food, everything. They don't care. They're having a great grand old time, and they'll just sign whatever headquarters tells them to do. They don't think about any of these things, and they just push forward whatever, you know, the elites tell them. And just like you, I was thoroughly disgusted at the EU and UN. I wanted to have nothing to do with it. So I ran away as far as I could from Switzerland and the IGOs. And let me ask you about the technocratic aspect. So you've got a book coming out soon in English, Digital World Brain. And I frequently call this the Al-Gore-Rithm Ghetto or algorithm gulag. I had on the Jewish historian Edwin Black, who coined the term Al-Gore-Rithm Ghetto because he compares it to the physical Jewish ghettos, because that's what they're going to be doing to us. They're going to put us in this digital algorithm ghetto, shut everything off. You can't buy or sell. And so we've got things like geolocation and mandatory digital passports where they can control our movements, cashless system where they can shut off our ability to eat and live. Yeah. They've tested this out in 2020, 2021, even here in Mexico, everywhere. They've mandating, you know, eugenics injections, proposing concentration camps, right, for dissidents or the infected, actively working toward removing private vehicle ownership, and even, you know, talking about no longer allowing air travel for us. And so what are your thoughts on some of these technocratic dystopian aspects of what they want to do?
Yeah, first of all, when you said algorithm, I call it the Al-Gore-Rithm.
It's a good one.
I mean, all this the climate thing that is all behind it, and Gore. I mean, he's a board member of Apple. So I mean, it's insane. It's so insane, and I think that is why so many people don't want to really. They don't want to really grasp it, because it's so scary. I mean, this is totalitarian, but in a whole new level. I mean, if they push this through, this is such a nightmare society, and that is one of the things. I mean, my new book, The Digital World Brain, that's what it's all about. And I went through this Our Common Agenda report, and we have these 12 commitments in this report about how to achieve Agenda 2030. And it's so technocratic. I mean, we talk a lot about how they will involve people. We will be inclusive, women and people from poor nations, and disabled people. And we talk about all these groups that they say, we will listen to them. But if you go into what they really say is, we listen to people if they say the things we want them to say. If they want other things, we have to have use behavioral design to influence them so they do the right decisions for themselves, because they don't know the best for themselves, and especially if they don't want the jab, or they don't believe in climate doomsday, when there is something wrong with them, and all this agenda is all about data. It's all about data. And we talk about a global digital compact, or it's the digital sphere as global commons, because that's how we sell in this. So we have these commons with atmosphere and oceans and space and on the Antarctica, but also the cybersphere. And so they will want to make everyone a part of this digital world and with digital IDs. And then we say, we have to manage these commons, and that's a thing for the United Nations. And the United Nations need to be upgraded, so that's when you get this world brain and this world government to govern us all and create this dystopian society. And it's it's scary, to say the least.
Is the vision? Yeah. Is the vision to have it? I'm answering my own question, but it's just, hard to fathom this. They want to make it uniform in all countries. It's like we saw that with the pandemic. I was living in Kazakhstan. Yeah. I fled through, back to Mexico, and the same stuff we saw everywhere: lockdown, digital passports. Basically, it's going to be universally on the planet, this system, in every single country.
Yes. And they talk about one thing, and that is creating an emergency platform. And that's a scary thing. This emergency platform is supposed to, before an emergency, because they identify crisis or global shocks that could happen in this world. And that's why we have to have this emergency platform. And the emergency platform will consist of United Nations agencies. We have like the European Union. We have big corporations, civil society organizations, and a lot of other actors. And they will beforehand decide upon protocols that they will follow in unison when an emergency is declared. So no one can say, we can't do this. This is wrong. So everyone will have agreed beforehand when the emergency hits. And they have a lot of emergencies. And that's one of the aspects of the WHO, new health regulation, and what they are working on now. That's that's a part of this. And a lot of people, they just talk about WHO. It's so much more than this. It's every aspect of what we humans are, and all the processes of the world that they want to control. It's just hubris. It's just insane. It's like a Bond movie, really.
Yeah, we're living in a Bond movie, basically.
Yeah.
And just to add to that, like you said, they can invent an emergency. There's really no emergencies, and so they're just inventing stuff. And just these days, here in Mexico, where I am, there's a huge forest in the city, and it has been really bad. It's been so bad, it's been burning. There's been no rain for a long time. It's kind of odd because I've been here for a decade, and I've never smelt the smoke this bad, where they're canceling classes, and you got to shut your windows. And I'm wondering, and they're already in the newspapers, they're talking about changing the paradigm of not having a car anymore. Here in the local Mexican papers, they're talking about, like, don't have a car. And I'm pretty sure maybe they've got someone starting the fire as the pretext, false flag, to roll out these climate lockdowns, where they're going to say, oh, you can't go to work this day or every other day, this sort of stuff. And let me ask you about, have you come across any, studying these people, this stuff, anything esoteric or occult? Because when I was in Geneva, I discovered the Lucis Trust, right? This NGO, Lucifer Publishing, founded in 1922 by Alice Bailey, theosophist who bases her work on Helena Blavatsky. Basically, if you ask me, is Satanists, because they believe in their own. You go to their website, they believe Lucifer is the Messiah, Prometheus, and they're actually preparing for Lucifer's return. It's in their own website. And I went to one of their meetings because they've got an office in New York, London, and Geneva. And I went to the Lucis Trust's meeting. The offices just happens to be right across from the UN in Geneva, and they are an official NGO member of ECOSOC UN. Just any thoughts that's interesting for you when it comes to any occult aspect to all of this?
Yes, of course. I have digged into this. So I've read Bailey. I have Blavatsky's books as well. They are not that easy to read, and that's not Bailey either. It's not Bailey. It's cool. and actually, I have another project. It's my music project. It's called Temple of Solomon. But I go into this more occult background. But that will be a book as well about where does these things come from? Where does it originate? And we know that if you read Bailey and externalization of hierarchy, for example, she talks a lot about interdependence and the creation of a world government. That's and they are very supportive of United Nations work. It's just to go into the website and read this. So and we also have this meditation room in the United Nations. A lot of people that has been very involved in this more esoteric and occult traditions has been involved in United Nations. So I think it's a big part of this agenda. And the idea that they have is, it's satanic in more than just thinking about this Satan guy. It's more the idea. It's more the philosophy to that man can be like God, and that man can supposed to copy and renew everything, build it up, and but we can build a replica of a human, or a replica of. We're talking about building this digital earth and everything, and we're doing everything artificial. So it all comes from alchemy, transforming us, all these ideas, and the idea of perfect the human and be a better human, and with the help of science and technology. Yes, so I mean, it's we say it's a huge part of this.
Yeah, and I subscribe to their newsletters, and it's funny. Like recently, they say stuff. When we had the last Davos meeting, Lucis Trust sends in their newsletters. They send these bulletins. They've got meetings, and they say we're sending, send meditations and prayers and seeds of love to Klaus Schwab to hope that this meeting of World Economic Forum will be successful, and the UN and the World Economic Forum and all this stuff. And so it's just it's amusing. And let me ask you about Russia and just your thought on geopolitics, because where do Russia, Ukraine, US, China conflict factor in? Because there's some people thinking the multipolar world's going to save us, and I'm like, no, I think that is actually the road to global governance and world federation is multipolarity. I've heard some great thinkers say multipolarity is unipolarity. Brazil, multipolarity, they just banned Telegram. How multipolar is that? Lula has been going around, we're going to cut your social welfare if you don't take 50 COVID vaccinations. He literally said that. And so we see Russia implementing in China all this technocratic stuff. And so what's your take on this whole BRICS plus multipolar world is going to save us, and Putin and Xi Jinping?
Well, it's just, you only have to read the documentation. I mean, all these countries are part of the G20, and they are part of the United Nations. So they are in this planning process. And if you go into G20, they have a lot of meetings whole year. Now it's in India. And they are planning for this new world. That's what everything is about. And this war is just a step on the way. It's the destruction of the old to bring in the new. And all these actors, they say, we need a multipolar order, multilateralism. And that's what the United Nations, our common agenda, is all about. And even if you have read Spinner Brzezinski and the Grand Chessboard, what he's writing in that book, in the end, is that United States will be the last truly superpower. But it will end. It could take one generation. And it's just, I mean, he wrote this in the late 90s. So now it has passed 2 decades. And so we saw it was an end of something. And something new would come out of this. And he said that it's United States has to work with manufacturing the new world order, preparing ground for what's to come. And that's the multilateral system. That's where a repurposed United Nations with more power. So that's what he said. I mean, and he was very influential in the wars that came in the early 2000s. So, and if you go in to read the BRICS reports, they say it as well, and they support the Agenda 2030. They support the new international or the new fourth industrial revolution. They endorse it. And I mean, it was China that at the same year in 2016 that Klaus Schwab introduced these ideas. They took it in their arms at the meeting in China at the G20. So, I mean, they're working with it. Yeah, and it's so obvious. So the new system will come after this war. and our common agenda and Summit of the Future is a big part of this.
Yeah, and I recently discovered that for the past 14 years, there's been a summer Davos in China with China, and some people just don't want to. I think it goes back to what you said earlier, that they were looking for an escape hatch from the Great Reset, looking to the east, and it's just really difficult to fathom that there's no escape hatch. There's no escape, nowhere to run. It's like Patrick McGoohan in The Prisoner. And I think he's even alluded to some of this stuff, and I love that series from the 70s. But you've said, any thoughts on how successful you think they are? And I've heard you say in a talk that you've said you believe they will fail, truth will prevail. So thoughts on how advanced they are, and yeah.
Yeah. Truth will prevail. I mean, I said it at the conference I was at. That it's like a natural law. It just and the truth bites them in the heels. They have all the power, all the money and everything. They have had foresight. They have so much, and they have worked so long with it. But they don't have the truth. They work with lies. We work with deception, and we know from history it doesn't work. And I think it's I think the history in the Bible is an example of this with Tower of Babel. I don't think it's. I mean, I think it happens for quite a times. It's the Tower of Babel is a. I mean, it's wisdom that we can't do these things. When we try to do it, it will collapse. It's just you can't beat it. I mean, and it's with our ideas of technocracy and transhumanism. I mean, it's idea to create a perfect system and to beat death, to think that we can live forever, and I mean, it doesn't work like that. So and that's the hubris. But of course, I think they will fail. But it could be nasty before they do it. So it's very important that we that had woken up start to cooperate and really get other people to understand this, so that we can stop it before we have new concentration camps.
Yeah, I see it as you do, and my concern has been trying to survive through this nasty phase, however long it is, whenever it is, whether it's in my time or my children's time. And so, any thoughts as to, what do we do? Just continue resisting? What are some of the best ways? And, do you find value as well and in purchasing some off-grid farmland just in case? So any thoughts for people on what to do?
Well, we have to think about alternatives. That's one thing, and we have to start to build networks between people that are awake and have skills. Because one thing, many people they are like, oh, I'm going to buy this place out in the nowhere, and I will do everything myself, farm the land, and I don't think that's the best thing to do. I think it's important that we cooperate with each other, because I mean, we are good at different things, and that is how we have survived before. It's with cooperating with each other to survive. So I think that's an important thing to do, to just, and I think that is also natural. It happens. I mean, like 10 years ago, I didn't have that many people to talk about these things. I was thinking about maybe I should move out in the woods or something, of course. But eventually, more and more people, and you find your real friends in this. So, and real friends help each other. So I think that is the good thing with this. I have had some questions, especially during the pandemic, about what do you think about these times? And I said, well, it's the worst time I have experienced, but also the best time. Because I found so many good people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The quote, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And yeah, well, I mean, what you're saying at this juncture seems to be the common denominator, what many of my guests say, and myself coming to this conclusion that community, a network is number one. You cannot do anything by yourself. You have to have some numbers around you where you are, at least in the, digital virtual world is great, but physical is also very,
it's
important.
Better.
Yeah, better. Actually,
it's better.
Yeah, I'm going to a number of conferences, so I'm actually getting to meet some of my past podcast guests, which is pretty cool. And there's a huge difference between witnessing a conference in person versus online. Huge difference. And let me ask you: have you written a doom metal song yet for Klaus?
The thing is, I have a song called the Georgia Guidestones Evolution, and I have a sample with Klaus Schwab in the middle of that song. So
okay, so you have any final...
and I have an idea for a song about him as well, a new song. So, of course,
you need to think of a good music video. Any final thought for us?
Any final thought? Well, I think things are. It's very easy to just watch this world and think that it's just doom and. But I actually think that we have some bright time ahead of us. We just have to beat this stupidity. So
there we go. We've got a white pill. So for listeners out there that complain about too many black pills, throwing white pills at you. And I'm going to be getting your books and looking. I'm not too much doom metal, but I'll check out some of your music. But your books definitely I'll be purchasing. Well, where's the best place? All of the links are in the description. But Jacob Nordangård.se. What are your latest projects and books, and where can people find them?
Yes, I mean, it's just that webpage. You can find all the links there. And to my, I have a Rockefeller Controlling the Game. It's in English. You can purchase as a book, real book, physical book. And I also have my records, of course. And I have a YouTube channel. You can listen to some of my interviews and some of the lectures that I've done in English. So I have a Substack, and that's a way to support me as well. For subscription. So I try to write a whole lot about these things, and I will hopefully this year have a global coup d'etat. That's my for a book that I wrote about the pandemic, and the Digital World Brain, my latest book, hopefully this year in English as well.
I look forward to those books. And I also, again, I think you approach some of this stuff from a unique angle, from a European perspective. And I think it's necessary because you've got the American analysts that miss some things that folks like yourself kind of add unique flavor to all of this. So thank you, Jacob, for being on Geopolitics and Empire.
Yeah, thanks a lot that you invited me.